Greetings YouTube. I'm having a little vlogception here because I'm using a camera to take a picture of my camera. Now, this setup is how I normally take film of my reviews of gear and figures and artwork and things like that. I set this small tripod up, which actually does extend, but I use it in the smallest configuration possible. I sit behind it, move my arms around it, and then I manipulate the object in question. It works admirably for small objects, but the stand gets in the way, and it doesn't let me do down shots, which means I can't fit large objects in the viewing field, and I can't use packaging. Occasionally it gets in the way. I can't read the packaging because if I'm trying to move the packaging in a vertical configuration, the stand gets in the way. If I want to do a review of a book and I'd like to lie the book flat and show images from the book, I can't. It doesn't work well. The stand's in the way. So I was thinking I would like to make a stand that I can set up on the table that I can clamp in place so it won't move, that will hold the camera in a down configuration. So this is what I plan on doing. I have a whole bunch of pipes here and fixtures, and I got myself a new tool which cuts pipes and some cement, and I'm going to build a rig that will allow me to hold the camera vertically. Now when you can take these legs here and you tighten them up until they're the smallest possible configuration, they fit inside that tube perfectly. So I'm going to build something that has a T leg there and a T leg there. It's going to have removable sides, so I can set it at either a 12-inch or a 24-inch height for different types of applications. And I will have a crossbar which holds a piece of this pipe, which will then allow me to slide the tripod in and then point the camera straight down. It's not going to be perfectly square. I know it's not going to be perfectly square, but this ball joint right here will let me make the fine adjustments I need to bring the camera into as close to a parallel position to the table itself as possible. And the beauty of this system is I can take it apart. I can change the height. I can put it on the floor. I can put it on the kitchen table. I can take it outside. I can do downward shots anywhere I want to, not just on this table. And all I have to do on the table to make it more stable, because this is, just a folding card table, is just clamp it in place with existing clamps. I already have those. So the next thing is going to be is to cut the pieces I need into the lengths I need, and then rough up the ends, and then prepare for cementing. I will do a dry fit completely before I go to the cementing position. And I don't think I'm going to have to do any location marks. I think that's not going to be required, because there's only going to be one thing that really has to line up, and I will be able to use the fixtures themselves as spacers for that. The rest of the things will just be, they don't have to line up perfectly because will line up once it's assembled. It's kind of a self-squaring process once it's assembled. Again, I'm trying to go for the simplest build as possible, and when I'm done, it will be something I can take apart and shove in the closet when I don't need it. So that's the goal, at least. So next up is going to be to take this whole thing into the pieces I need and start fitting them. Alright, here are the tools I use to achieve this. At the moment you can't see it, but that's kind of the point. So, tape measure, sandpaper, rag, pen, a clamp, deburring tool. I actually deburred the ID as well as the OD, and a hacksaw. I did it outside on my porch, less mess that way. So I back up, and you now see what I'm talking about. This is the unit. Now you can see it's off center at the moment, and that's fine, because I want to be able to have this thing set up either on the floor, on a table, what have you. So these overhangs here will not be used a lot of the time, and that's okay. That's not a problem. It'll be used in this offset manner. The camera will slide in here in that on the stand, as I mentioned before. In fact, I can go get that for you, show you what I mean. in that configuration, like this, it will slide into that hole, and then it will point straight down to here. This will be essentially the focal point of the video. And I can push it off a little bit, put another inch or so if I can get it a little closer in. I haven't decided, I may cut that off a smidge, because I think I've got enough to travel. I could make that maybe an inch shorter. We'll see. It's not that difficult to fix. Now, some of these things will be glued together. For example, these caps and these two will be glued to this. This will become one contiguous piece. That's going to be a dry fitting. That's going to be a dry fitting. This will be glued, as will this, and this will be a dry fitting, as will this. So you'll be able to break this down into the two bases, the two side pieces, and the horizontal support. Now I actually miscalculated, and I'm short one piece of tubing. I need one more 2-foot piece of tubing that I could then cut in half, so I could bring this down to the 1 foot mark if I want to get closer to something. But at the moment, this is a proof of concept. So I wanted to have it at the 2 foot and the 1 foot. So I'm halfway there. And I can go and pick up another piece of tubing this weekend, and just all I have to do is whack it in half and deburr the ends. So that's not going to be a problem. Now it is large, but it's large that can be broken down and fit into a small space in my closet, which is the goal, that I can take it out, strap it to the table, set my camera up, and get a down view of exactly what I want to look at. I'm going to have to check and see how this works once it's in play, but now the big feature is going to be gluing this so that everything is kind of square. Because you're going to see it's a dip right there, so I'm going to have to take this apart, glue it up so that these are at 90 degrees to this. These right here have to be 90 degrees to this piece here, and then these all have to be straight. So I'll have to do that on the table or the floor, one of the two. And then these have got to be in line with each other, and the bottom of this has to be in line with the bottom of this, because these are roughly the same diameter. They're going to become the supports for it. So there you have it. So that's the next stage. Taking it apart in the parts I want to glue together, and not gluing together the parts I don't want to glue together. So we're going to do it one at a time, so there's no confusion, so things don't get glued in a way that they shouldn't be glued. So that's the next step. Alright, so I'm still filming this on my flip. We've done some of the initial adhesive bonding. So we have these two, which were going to be the legs, and after some consideration I realized I didn't need the outriders. This is stable, particularly when I'm going to clamp it to the table from the sides. So that makes it smaller, easier to store, and it means those two pieces I was going to use as the outriders can then become my 1 foot verticals. So save some money, save some space, awesome. Now because I had that left over, it means I had 2 caps left over. So what I've done here is I've drilled a hole, and I've put a 1/4-20 hole bolt in there. Yeah, I know the bolt is not perfectly in the center. Getting that hole directly in the center of the cap is really hard without a centering jig and a number of other things that I need to get it perfectly in the middle. But it's very, very close, and this will be fitting into the T-section, so I can have a smaller, shorter mount. We're going to see if that works. And again, this cost me no additional money. This was this piece of scrap I had from cutting up the 2 main supports across the top, the horizontal, and since I wasn't going to have those outriders, I didn't have to worry about that. So, and extra caps. First cap I screwed up. It was even more off center. So there you go. And the last thing I have to do is, once these have bonded to my satisfaction, so they're nice and secure, is to join them with this. And the only tricky connection is I'm going to need to make sure that I get this at 90 degrees to these. So it needs to go in that orientation right there. That's going to be the only tricky bit of this process, I think. So I'm going to try real hard to get that lined up right. So we'll see what happens. I'm probably going to hook up the pieces, the pieces that are just going to slide in and out of here, and use those as guides to help me kind of get everything copacetic. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully hopefully I can do it right. So that's the next stage, is to let these dry for a bit and then bond the last two pieces to each other and to that T in the center. All right, so here we go. We have the completed unit and the camera is currently mounted, and it is not absolutely perfectly parallel, but it's off by such a small amount that I don't think it's going to matter. And the next footage is going to be me actually filming something in this configuration to see how it looks. Now the astute amongst you will know that I had my hacksaw earlier and I didn't use this. Now this is the thing that I found bizarre. This is 1.5 inch PVC type 1. Okay, schedule 40. Okay, I've worked with this before, never had a problem with it. Here's the thing. There is no dimension on this piece of tubing which is actually 1.5 inches. The ID, the inside diameter of this tube, is 1.6 inches, not 1.5. The OD is 1.9 inches, not 1.5. So I'm confused why they call it 1.5. 100 thousandths off is a large difference. A really big difference. 25 more thousandths of an inch and it would be 1/8 of an inch off. That's a lot. Remember, I come out of inspection history. In inspection, 100 thou is from here to California. Okay, it's a huge amount. So I'm confused by this. I know that one of my subscribers, I think Smiling Viking, is a journeyman plumber. So if anybody else there has any plumbing experience and can explain to me why this says 1.5 inches when there is no dimension on it that is 1.5 inches, I would love to know. So next up, we're going to give this a try. Okay, now we're going to give this a try. It's going to take some getting used to in holding objects here, because I can just barely see the screen at the moment. But I can in fact see it. Here we go. And now I can show off the HDX pipe cutter, which has a lock here. It's kind of interesting actually, because you go like this, and then it hits the support, and that opens it all the way up. That kind of makes me smile the way they designed that. And then to ratchet it, you go. There you go. Which is kind of cool. Now, as I said earlier, I actually have some plans in the future. I was thinking of using some PVC pipe to make some darts for an atlatl. That's a project I'd like to do. So I'll be using this for cutting the tubing. And a couple of other things that I've been inspired by some of the things done by Backyard Boyer. He has done some really interesting things with PVC. So we're going to try one more video other than this one to see how it works when I talk about a book. Alright, so now we're going to talk about a book. I believe I have this, some schmutz on the table. I believe I have this centered so that when I open it, it should be pretty much right underneath the camera. So we're going to see how this looks when I look at the footage on the computer. So one of the reasons I want to do this is that it'll let me do reviews of role-playing books, because a lot of the time when I'm doing them, there are illustrations in books which I think are very evocative, and they're important to describing how the game appears and how it projects its setting and illustrates some of the mechanics, because frequently role-playing game illustrations will be describing mechanics that are in the book. Like, for example, obviously this person is hiding in the shadows. These people are in full combat. This person's here ready to strike when they go by. So, you know, that is a mechanic being described, or at least a trait being described by the illustration. Then, for example, you have illustrations of half-elves and half-orcs, and I'm hoping that these are showing up somewhat clearly. I'll bring this in a little and see if that makes a difference. Then we have an ogre monster. Then we have the silly two-handed sword, which is way too large to use. Inspired by anime and manga because for some reason they love giant swords. Giant swords thrill them. Makes no sense whatsoever. Yes, I know it's a fancy game, but it still bothers me. Things that are from the real world should behave like they do in the real world. That's my position. So folks, there you have it. This is my new rig. I imagine I'll be using the 1 foot uprights most frequently. And I will be testing the 2 footers because I do have some larger weapons I want to describe. I have 4 machetes that I need to review, 5 machetes I need to review. I have a hand axe, and I want to be able to show off some of my construction processes, I think. So now that I can set it up and work on something in front of me, hopefully I can actually maybe do some short video segments of me doing some of my crafts or something like that. You know what I mean? So I'm not holding the camera, and the camera is in a position where it actually can see what I'm working on. Particularly if I'm using the 2 foot uprights, because that's going to take the camera and give me a full. I mean, it's not, my view isn't going to be here. My view would be almost the width of the space I have between the uprights. So there you have it, folks. I'm really happy with this. This little short mount I'm currently using is working marvelously, and I have the other tube if I want to use this, which was my original idea, but I think I've come up with a simpler solution. And I like simple. Simple is good. And as I described recently to someone on a comment on a video I watched, simplifying something is often the hardest part.